tentacles.
Do you know how expensive that shot was?
When the robots are literally just like freaking sprinting down the highway.
Yeah. Well, that's me in the mocap running.
Dude. How does one animate an owl? Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Visual Effects Artists React. Today is a very special episode because we got none other than Mathieu Dimuro here on the couch with us, animation supervisor at Agora Studios. He's been on the streets for 20 years animating.
So as you said, I've been prostituting myself for 20 years. Animating for various studios. So I've spanned from feature work to visual effects, animation, through a ton of different titles, the Marvel stuff, the Transformers stuff, Lego movie, just a span of ton of cool projects and fun projects.
Well, let's jump in.
Legend of the Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole.
Our longest, most requested reaction. Legend of the Guardians, Owls of Ga'Hoole. We are finally going to talk about that with a person that actually worked on it.
I did.
To battle!
So this is a Zack Snyder production. How long ago did this come out? Like 15 years ago?
It's a while.
So what was your responsibility on this show?
I was a lead, and this is the biggest team I've ever had to lead, which grew to 15, 16 artists by the end.
Wow.
This was a monumental project, but it was super fun, and we had a very talented team. It was a really, really good project to work on.
The big scene that people want us to talk about was the rain scene, where they're over the water.
I worked on it, yeah.
You worked on that shot?
Yeah, I've got it.
Perfect.
Zack Snyder.
Here we go.
Ooh, that lightning. Somebody saw The Matrix. Not the first one, but the third one. Those feathers look great in the water.
Dude, it's one thing to animate a bird flying. It's another to animate a bird through a storm.
I think that comes down to staging and having a layout pass, and a layout pass is what happens before animation. So there's a whole department that's placing cameras and making them dynamic and moving the characters in space. And for this show, we even had like speedometers to go, okay, they fly at about this speed. And that way they could have the cameras moving at a right speed. So for in this case, to make sure the cameras are moving in the right direction so the rain goes the right direction. And then animating, like getting those little inching forward and getting the feeling that they're pulling back and actually animating that, how the flaps are more labored and all that stuff. And then all the feathers and all that just sells everything. And they make us look so good, all those departments.
So there's obviously a lot of like simulation stuff happening here between all of the feathers and the water and the raindrops and all of that stuff. But as an animator, you're responsible for the baseline.
Correct.
How does one animate an owl?
I mean, there's a lot of liberties taken. You can find like sometimes like, footage of an eagle falling or a bird somebody captured that, and you can kind of take inspiration from that. But then you're like, well, is it cinematic enough? A lot of these birds that we see in movies often are animated slower because, and especially for a movie like this where they're talking and they're interacting, they almost become people. And so they can't act, like if an owl is this big, they move very, very quickly. They're gone in 2 frames. So you can't have that for a movie where it's supposed to be a dramatic exit.
Yeah.
And it's the big guy, right? It's like, it's the big furry one who's the biggest one of them, and the live action footage is like, let's say 3 frames to get out. Like, no, I'm gonna take like half a second or something like that to really get the push on the thing to make him feel heavy. Because if not, I don't think the audience could connect to them.
So you almost are animating these owls as if they're 6-foot tall human beings.
Pretty much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you're animating, you're not just getting a million feathers all physically simulated in real time when you move your wing around, right? So I'm assuming those are added after the fact. But if you're to pluck all the feathers off an owl, you just end up with this weird potato with like 2 sticks coming out. Is that what you're animating? Is a potato with 2 sticks coming out?
No. I mean, that would have been pretty challenging. So for the wings, you do get the primaries, which are the most important feathers that are there, and we had control over them. So if ever you wanted a gap, or you wanted something, or we could put some noise on them, and then on top of that, all the other stuff would get simped.
So some feathers are built into the model that you're animating, and other feathers are added later.
Correct. In terms of the potato, you would get a volume of the body.
Okay.
Which essentially is just geometry that represents the overall size.
Oh, okay.
So not just the skin, like as if you're to shrink wrap the owl.
Correct.
Interesting, okay.
Correct. So you animate to that. So if ever there's a design change, that has to get updated because then we can get the proportions so that when you're animating and you're putting them, trying to get certain silhouettes or whatever, you've got the right sizes that you're working with.
The type of owl that Soren is, imagine if you pluck the feathers off, the head of the owl kind of looks like any other bird.
Yeah.
But like that specific shape of like the almost like plates, the tea saucers around the eyes coming to like the peak at the nose. Like that's all part of, you need that for like the expressions.
Of course, yeah.
And so you just have like a kind of simplified geometric version of that when you're animating.
Well, for the faces, they're more detailed because we need to have them emote, the lower lids, all that is there, but the little tiny feathers, no. Like maybe we had a texture to make it look nicer, so when we're presenting to Zach and stuff like that, he knows what he's looking at and it feels more appealing, but no, the feathers are not there.
There's some pretty impressive stuff going on. I mean, obviously there's crazy simulations and really beautiful rendering and all this kind of stuff, but the thing that really hits me is just like this feeling of that they are flying and moving forwards, when in reality, all we're seeing is just a model going like this and like feathers waving in the wind. Like, it just feels so alive. I mean, the idea of all these individual feathers being wet and like moving on the owl as well. And I guess you guys have to make it look like it's an actual owl while still being a little bit of a cartoon.
But a lot of it is, I think what makes this so successful is a combination of all these departments working well together. And I think that plays a big part.
You've got to be kidding me.
I know. We have looked at Transformers so many times at this point. Well, we're looking at it again.
And we're gonna look at it more in the future, because that's just how it is.
Say what you will about the stories of those movies. Those are technologically artistic masterpieces.
I worked on 3, 4, and 5.
Okay.
Transformers was my favorite TV show as a kid. I used to watch it in French and English because I'm French Canadian. So I got to watch double the Transformers on Saturday mornings. Like, I was so excited. I was so excited to work on these movies. I got a basic, simple shot to animate with a hand clawing at a parking structure. And then they had nothing simpler to give me. So they actually gave me a really cool shot. He's got the shield and he smashes a helicopter and then slices another thing and just bang, bang, he's just demolishing stuff in a hangar.
The highway chase scene in Transformers 3 is honestly incredible. It was my favorite moment of the entire movie. When the robots are literally just like freaking sprinting down the highway.
yeah.
Just like that feeling of like, here's a massive thing just sprinting and the legs are moving so fast.
Well, that's me in the mocap running.
Dude. Had you done any mocap before then?
I assisted on sets for mocap shoots on other stuff. This is the first time getting suited up with everything and doing the whole deal. So one thing Michael would always ask, I want a different transformation. I want them to be different. So for that, at that point, this was later in the show, they say, hey, Matt, do you want to come up with a new transformation? And so I just kind of chopped up the geo of the trucks and just kind of like, oh, what if they kind of break in half and then you can roll and do that? And they're like, yep. So cool. And that's a fun little fact. In the middle, the camera pivots. And when we looked at the plate, Michael was like, why did we turn the camera? I think it was always supposed to go straight. So it was a bit of a mistake that they did on set. But instead, we chose to highlight. So he was like, well, let's do something with it. So we highlighted the fact that the Panther gets shot and he hits the median, and then the camera kind of pulls on him. And then I think we warped a little bit, like time warped it.
So Michael didn't actually want the camera to necessarily turn around when he looked at the actual sequence. Like, no, that wasn't actually the way the shot was supposed to work. And you're like, but what if we just made something really cool happen? And then he's like, I like that idea.
Yeah. And this is kind of the result of that.
Dude, that's a great way to make lemons out of lemonade right there.
Yep.
Dang, okay.
The shot after, you might recognize it from another film.
Oh, I know about that one.
You know about that?
I know the shot. I know the shot.
Why do you cut to a shot from the island here?
Because do you know how expensive that shot was? Oh, it's the plate, when you see the plate, it's a big metal thing that sticks out of the road and they just drive that car just straight at it and just slam into it. And I think it was just like, this is a perfect shot for this moment. I'm reusing my plate.
Yeah, absolutely.
The median's completely different. No one cares. No one's looking at that.
You know, the shot of all the cars flipping, and when they go to the point of view shot, you can just see the like straight up like ramrod from the cannon just boom, 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 flying past camera. That big cylinder that's bouncing along the road that looks like a gas tank, that's one of the big ramrods they have in the cannons underneath the car to launch it when it flips. So that shot out of the car right there.
Oh, wow.
That's how they flipped it.
Dang. And it just looks like debris.
Yeah.
No one have any idea.
They're just like, no, I'll just leave it in. This like tree. You can see it smoking on the end from like
It just adds to it though.
Yeah.
You're like, adds to the chaos. With the technology we have, someone could have painted that out.
Yeah.
And like spent days doing that. But instead, it's like, who cares?
Yeah, I want that.
It looks better with it.
It does, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. When you're filming real destruction, like, preserve and cherish the beauty of chaos. Because even on a computer, you just can't quite get it. It doesn't have the same fine detail of real life.
So you continued on from Transformers 3, and did you move immediately into Transformers 4?
Yeah, I did get to jump back on to the Transformers world. I continued to do mocap, and there's very much a shot of me walking.
So the shot you're describing is the one where like the dude's walking out of the smoke and he's got the big shit behind him.
Yeah, that's right.
That's like, I feel like that's one of the more iconic shots from this movie.
It was in the
It's just like-
trailer.
it's so foreboding. It's like, oh, this is the villain?
Yeah. And for a lot of animators, we do pay attention to a lot of details on how people walk and all that stuff. And any of my friends that worked in animation that have known me for a while were like, that is you. That is exactly you walking. But I'm sure the animator that did it probably slowed it down a little bit. I'm pretty short, so I move pretty quick.
Can I see you do the walk from the door to us?
This is what, 10 years ago?
I'm gonna imagine this giant spaceship behind you.
Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, so it's this one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
dude.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yep. Dude, it's on the shoulders. It's in the shoulder rotation.
It's called stiff shoulders. But it's just funny because anyone that worked with me that knew me were like, oh man, that's you.
Oh, hey, Jeffrey. Nice to see you again. I see you're still not subscribed, and that kind of breaks my heart. It's okay, though. I'm used to that. But if you subscribe, it might be better. Just saying. Tentacles. Tentacles. Tentacles.
So we were told by another animator that tentacles are hard to deal with.
They are. I've always had fun doing that sort of stuff. I like the messiness of it. It's not easy, that's for sure. And we were fortunate enough to have really good rigs. Because what happens is sometimes tentacles grab, sometimes they slip, sometimes they stick to things. And so in order to have a rig that can handle all of those moments, you need to be able to switch to different modes, if you will. So that tentacle all of a sudden is controlled a certain way, then it's controlled a different way.
Do you have like a rule set that you internally try to follow when you animate tentacles?
In this case, like you just saw two tentacles doing this, right? So it's about making that aesthetically pleasing in the shapes. And that you can almost go back to the base of animation. The most important thing I need to tell the story here is this tentacle wraps around this guy and then throws him up in the air. So you start with that, and then you can, how do I set dress this? How do I make the composition interesting? And then you try to work diligently on the contacts with the grounds and all that, and all the different little motions. We did have some procedural stuff for the back tentacles where you could just turn on a thing and the tentacles would
Okay,
just
I was
go.
actually wondering, like, why go the animation route when you can probably just write some code and have the tentacles do the tentacle things?
Well, because you've got screen direction, and you've got shot composition, and you've got art direction, and I'm sure with newer AI, maybe I'll be replaced, and AI will do the tentacles. But essentially, that's why you can't do those moments like that. But that was a fun sequence to work on.
What other tentacles have you animated? Like, have there been other tentacles?
There's been many tentacles. I got to do some on Skull Island. I got a little last.
Got the little gummy worm.
Yep. Nope. Doug. Nope, not coming. Come on.
Come on.
Oh, that's pretty
Come
great.
on.
Come on,
Ooh.
dinner. So I got to do a few shots like that. I really wanted the one where he's really eating it. Oh. And I only got the last slurp. Somebody else got the other shot because the other artist is also really good at doing tentacles, but I really wanted that, but no one wanted those. I was like, I'll do it.
So did you pull up Old Boy to reference that?
Yes, actually, yes, it was the reference. That was the reference that we were asked to do, but I think some of the logistics of the size of the tentacles didn't quite work.
Ren, do you know about the reference that we're talking about from Old Boy?
I've never seen Old Boy, but I know the reference you're talking about.
Yeah,
So yeah.
the actor ate a live octopus
Yeah.
on set. Very intense. This will be on the website, I guess. Viewer discretion advised, he eats a live octopus.
But yeah, tentacles. They're your worst nightmare, but if you like them, they can be a lot of fun.
I want to see more tentacles in movies. If you got any suggestions for the most tentacles, leave a comment down below.
You can get lots of inappropriate suggestions.
Like movies, like whatever's in movies and TV shows that's like live action, not anime. I I mean, we looked at so much today, and it was all epic. We finally looked at Guardians of Ga'Hoole.
Owls of Ga'Hoole.
Legend of the Guardians, Owls of Ga'Hoole.
Yeah.
Matt, it was an honor having you on the couch with us today. It was really cool getting that inside perspective of what it's like to actually do animation in movies today. And I don't think we would have gotten that otherwise, so thank you.
My pleasure. Please check out the Agora community. That is a wonderful place to learn and to potentially improve your skills.
Awesome stuff. We'll have a link in the description below if that interests you and you want to actually delve into this work.